I found my wife's wedding ring in a cigar box that belonged to a man named Harold Mercer, and for several minutes I convinced myself it only looked like hers. Harold was 83 and moving into assisted living outside Madison, Wisconsin. I had known him years earlier when we both worked for the same university facilities department. I was a refrigeration mechanic. Harold maintained laboratory glassware and small equipment. We were friendly, never close. His daughter asked if I would help sort the basement because Harold trusted familiar faces more than strangers. The ring was under a stack of old Union cards. Plain yellow gold, narrow band. Nothing unusual until I turned it beneath the work light. There was a tiny flattened spot on the inside edge, shaped almost like a thumbprint. I knew that mark. In 1984, 3 months after I married Linda, I caught her ring in the latch of a folding lawn chair. The band bent slightly. A jeweler repaired it, but one small flat place remained inside. Linda used to rub it with her thumbnail when she was thinking. My name is Michael Avery. I was 68 when I found the ring. Linda had been dead 6 years. I told myself there had to be another explanation. 1,000 plain gold bands must have been repaired badly. Then I saw the engraving. M and L, followed by our wedding date. My hands went cold. The impossible part was not that Harold had Linda's ring. It was that I could picture Linda wearing it 10 years after the date on the cigar box. I remembered the ring on her hand at our daughter's college graduation. I remembered it catching the light while she carved Thanksgiving turkey. I remembered holding that same hand during her first chemotherapy appointment. Harold came down the basement stairs using the rail. He saw the ring in my palm. He stopped. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then he said, "I wondered when somebody would find that." I asked the only question I could manage. "Why do you have my wife's wedding ring?" Harold lowered himself onto the bottom step. "She gave it to my sister." That answer made less sense than the ring itself. Because as far as I knew, Linda had never even met Harold's sister. Harold's sister was named Evelyn. She had died 3 years earlier. I knew the name only because Harold mentioned visiting her in Milwaukee during holidays. She worked for many years as a school cafeteria manager and later volunteered at a hospice thrift store. I asked him when Linda gave her the ring. 2001, he said. I immediately rejected it. That's not possible. Harold looked at the ring. Why? Because Linda still wore it afterward. No, she wore another one. I almost laughed. You're telling me I didn't recognize my own wife's wedding ring? I'm telling you the second ring was made to look like the first. That was the point where confusion became something heavier. I drove home with the ring in a small envelope. I had kept Linda's jewelry after she died. Her replacement ring, if that was what it was, sat in a blue velvet box inside my dresser. I put the two bands beside each other. They were almost identical. Same width, same soft yellow gold, same simple engraving inside. But the newer ring had no flattened spot. I had never noticed. I called my daughter Rachel. She was 41 and living in Minneapolis. Do you remember your mother ever having her wedding ring replaced? No. Ever losing it? Not that I know of. I told her what I had found. She went quiet. Dad, are you sure? I'm looking at both rings. Another pause. Maybe Grandma knew. Linda's mother had died long ago, but Rachel's suggestion gave me another place to look. Linda kept a small spiral notebook of household expenses in the early 2000s. I found it in a box of recipes. Between grocery totals and dentist appointments was one entry from March of 2001. Jensen Jewelers. Match old band exactly. Cash. No amount. No explanation. The next page had been torn out. I remembered Jensen Jewelers, a family store near State Street that closed years earlier. I found the former owner, Susan Jensen, through an online directory. She remembered Linda. Not immediately. Then I described the ring. "Oh," she said, "the duplicate. You made it?" "My father did." "Why?" Susan hesitated. She said she needed the replacement to be indistinguishable unless somebody looked very closely. That somebody, apparently, had been me Susan met me at a coffee shop near the old jewelry store. She brought a thin folder from her father's business records. Most customer files had been destroyed, but she had saved a few unusual repair notes. Linda's name was there. The order read, duplicate plain band. Match width, color, engraving, where pattern where practical. Do not reproduce interior repair flattening. That last line tightened my chest. Why leave out the repair mark? Susan shook her head. She wanted the rings distinguishable to her. But not to me. I didn't know anything about you. She turned another page. There was a note in her father's handwriting. Customer emotional. Says original being given away permanently. Permanently. I asked whether Linda came alone. No. Another woman was with her. Evelyn Mercer? Susan looked through the file. That name sounds right. Harold had told the truth. Linda intentionally gave away her actual wedding ring. I drove to Milwaukee the next day and visited Evelyn's daughter, Denise. She was in her late 50s and worked for a public library system. When I showed her the ring, she covered her mouth. I thought Mom took that to the grave. Why did she have it? Denise looked uncomfortable. She wore it. That was the first moment my mind went somewhere I did not want to go. Not an affair. Evelyn was a woman. Linda had never given me any reason to suspect another relationship. Still, a wedding ring meant something. Why would your mother wear my wife's ring? Denise said, because she needed people to believe she was married. I waited. In 2001, Mom was applying to become legal guardian for my cousin Leah. Leah was 32 then, an adult with developmental disabilities. Her mother had died suddenly. Her father was gone. Evelyn wanted to take responsibility for her. The ring, Denise explained, was not legally necessary. But Evelyn believed social workers and landlords treated a married woman as more stable. That sounds ridiculous. It was. Then why Linda's ring? Denise looked at me with an expression I could not read. Because Linda told her it had already done its job. I felt offended by the sentence before I understood it. What job? She said it had helped convince you to stay married. I drove home angry. Not jealous. Not yet. Angry because the explanation made Linda sound like our marriage had been something fragile she managed without my knowledge. I pulled old photo albums from the closet. 2001 had not been a good year. I remember that much. My father had died the previous winter. Work was chaotic because the university expanded several research buildings. Rachel had just started high school and was fighting with Linda constantly, and I was barely home. There was another detail I had reduced over the years. Linda and I had separated briefly, not officially, not publicly. I slept in the basement for several weeks after an argument about my drinking. I was not an alcoholic. That was how I described it then. I was a man who came home tired and poured 3 fingers of bourbon before dinner, sometimes more. Linda asked me to stop. I told her she was exaggerating. One night, I punched a hole in the laundry room door after she poured a bottle down the sink. I never hit her. For years, I used that fact like a certificate of innocence. Looking at old photographs, I noticed something I had missed. Before March, Linda wore the original ring with the flat repair mark. After April, the band looked slightly thicker. The duplicate. I called Denise again. How did Linda know your mother? They met at a grief group. That surprised me. Linda had attended after my father died because she said she was helping Rachel deal with losing her grandfather. Apparently, she was going for herself too. Evelyn had recently lost her sister. They became friends. Did Linda tell Evelyn we were separating? Yes. Did she tell her she wanted a divorce? Denise hesitated. At first, the first truth landed there. Linda did not give away the ring casually. She gave it away during a period when she believed our marriage might be over. She gave it to Evelyn because, in her mind, the symbol no longer belonged to the future she expected. Then something changed. Linda stayed. She replaced the ring. And for 20 years, she never told me the original had left her hand. At that point, I believe I understood why. She did not want me to know how close she had come to leaving. I was wrong. Harold had more of the story. when I returned to his assisted living apartment. He was sitting by the window sorting photographs into envelopes. I placed both rings on the table, the original and the copy. He studied them. Evelyn always said the old one felt heavier. They weigh almost the same. She didn't mean weight. I asked what Linda meant when she said the ring had already done its job. Hindsight, you're taking that sentence the wrong way. Then give me the right way. He told me Linda had once shown Evelyn the repaired spot inside the band. The flat place came from that lawn chair accident early in our marriage. Linda used to say it reminded her of our first serious fight. I remember that fight. I blamed her for damaging the ring. She blamed me for caring more about the ring than the fact she had cut her finger. We apologized before bed. The next morning, I took the band to be repaired. According to Harold, Linda remembered something about that day that I did not. I had borrowed money from my father for the repair because we were broke. When the jeweler offered to replace the ring entirely, I refused. I told Linda, I want the one we started with. That sentence stayed with her. Years later, during our separation, she looked at the damaged place and wondered whether I still believed that. She gave it to Evelyn because she thought the answer was no. Harold said, then why replace it? Because she changed her mind? That's what I thought. Harold shook his head. No. He opened a desk drawer and removed an old birthday card. Inside, in Linda's handwriting, was a note to Evelyn. He let me read it. I'm not replacing what I gave you. I'm buying Michael another chance to choose without knowing I already decided for him. I read it twice. What does that mean? Harold looked almost apologetic. You should talk to Rachel. I felt a chill. My daughter knew? Eventually. I called Rachel from the parking lot. She cried before I finished the question. Then she said, Dad, Mom didn't stay because she'd already forgiven you. That was not the answer I expected. Rachel was 16 when Linda gave away the ring, old enough to understand more than we thought. She remembered our arguments. She remembered my bourbon glass. She remembered the hole in the laundry room door. And she remembered asking Linda if we were getting divorced. Linda said she did not know. A week later, Rachel found the original ring missing. She asked about it. Linda told her she had given it to a friend who needed it more. What did you think that meant? I asked. I thought she was done with you. That hurt, even after all these years. Then Rachel said something else. I begged her not to leave. I closed my eyes. Rachel, I was 16. I know. I told her I couldn't handle changing schools. I told her you'd fall apart. I told her everything would be my fault. Linda stayed, not because she had forgiven me, not because the ring reminded her of our vows, because our daughter panicked. For several months, Linda treated staying as temporary. She bought the duplicate ring because Rachel kept watching her hand. The missing band frightened her. Linda wanted Rachel to stop measuring the marriage by whether a ring was present. That was why the replacement had to look almost identical. And she never told me. Not then. I sat in my car for nearly an hour. I had spent years remembering that period as a rough patch we worked through together. The truth was less flattering. Linda had already taken off her original ring. She stayed first for Rachel. Then, slowly, she decided whether to stay for herself. That distinction mattered. I looked back at my own behavior. After the basement months, I did stop drinking at home. I repaired the door. I started coming back earlier from service calls. I attended counseling with Linda for almost a year. I always thought those changes saved our marriage. Maybe they did, but I had never understood the order. She did not stay because I changed. I changed because she stayed long enough to let me show whether I could. The duplicate ring was not proof that she had forgiven me. It was proof she had postponed a decision. That was harder to accept. It was also more honest. One question remained. Why give the original ring to Evelyn instead of putting it in a drawer? Denise answered that when I returned to Milwaukee. Leah, the cousin Evelyn hoped to care for, had a complicated history with wedding rings. Her mother wore one until the day she died. Afterward, Leah became fixated on the missing ring because hospital staff removed it and gave it to a relative. She associated a wedding band with someone staying. Evelyn did not tell Linda that at first. She only mentioned that Leah felt safer around married women because her mother had taught her, wrongly but sincerely, that married people did not leave. Linda understood the logic immediately. She had a frightened daughter at home staring at her own bare hand. Evelyn had a frightened young woman doing something similar. Two people placing too much meaning on a circle of gold. Linda gave Evelyn the ring, not as a trick for social workers. Not mainly, she told her, use it until Leah learns you're staying. Evelyn wore the ring for years. Eventually, Leah no longer asked about it. By then, Evelyn could not bring herself to take it off. It had become connected to the day she promised another person she would not disappear. That's why Mom kept it. Denise said, "Did Linda know?" "Yes." "Did she ever ask for it back?" "No." I looked at the flattened spot inside the band. The imperfection I had recognized immediately. Denise said Linda visited occasionally. The two women stayed friends until Evelyn moved to Milwaukee. "Did she ever tell your mother about us?" "Some." "What did Evelyn think of me?" Denise smiled a little. "She thought you were lucky." "That's generous." "No, she meant lucky you got time." That sentence followed me home. I had thought the original ring represented what Linda hid from me. Now it represented the time she gave me without promising the outcome. And the same ring had given Evelyn a way to make another promise visible to someone who needed reassurance. Still, one part did not fit. Why had Harold kept it after Evelyn died? He had said he wondered when someone would find it. That sounded less accidental than everything else. Harold told me the rest the following week. Evelyn left the ring to him with written instructions. Not for Denise. Not for Leah. For me. "Why didn't you give it to me?" She told me not to. He handed me a folded sheet of notebook paper. Evelyn's handwriting was shaky. "Michael should get this only if he finds it while helping you. If that never happens, let it go." I looked at Harold. "That's ridiculous." "Probably. Why would she leave it to chance?" "She didn't." Harold smiled faintly. "She knew I would ask you to help when I moved." Evelyn had planned the entire simple arrangement. No dramatic delivery. No letter arriving after death. Just an old man, a basement, and a cigar box she knew I would probably open. On the bottom of her note was one final sentence. "Linda asked me never to return the ring while she was alive." That was the second truth. Linda had known Evelyn still had it. She deliberately left it there, not because she was ashamed of giving it away, because she did not want the original ring to become a test of our marriage. Harold explained that years after our reconciliation, Evelyn offered to return it. Linda refused. She told her, "If I bring it home, Michael will turn it into evidence that we made it. I don't want him loving the object more than what happened after I stopped wearing it." I had to sit down. Linda knew me. She knew I would have taken the ring back, placed it on her finger, and converted the whole painful period into a neat story about endurance. She did not want that. The replacement ring was enough. Our marriage after 2001 had to stand on its own. Counseling, apologies, ordinary dinners, years of showing up. The original band belonged to another promise by then, and Linda believed taking it back would make both stories smaller. I still wish she had told me. But for the first time, I understood why silence might have felt less dishonest to her than turning the ring into a symbol I could misunderstand. I gave the original ring to Leah. She was 54 and living in a supported apartment in Milwaukee. Denise arranged a visit. Leah remembered Evelyn clearly. She remembered the ring too. When I placed it on the table, she touched the flattened spot with one finger. "Aunt Evelyn's." "Yes." Denise looked at me. I could have corrected her. I did not. It had been Evelyn for longer than it had been Linda's. Leah asked why I had it. I said, "A friend gave it back." That was enough. She tried it on, then laughed because it was too small. We put on a chain instead. Before leaving, I told Denise I wanted Leah to keep it. "You're sure?" I looked at the ring. "Yes." I kept Linda's replacement band. It sits beside her photograph on my dresser. For years, I thought that ring was the original because I never looked closely enough to see what was missing. Now, the missing flat spot matters more to me than the perfect engraving. The first ring carried the mark of an accident early in our marriage. The second had no damage at all. That once would have made it feel less authentic. Now I think the opposite. The replacement was a ring Linda chose after she had stopped believing our marriage was guaranteed. She put it on while she was still uncertain. She wore it while I learned to come home sober. She wore it through Rachel leaving for college, my mother's funeral, job layoffs, ordinary vacations, bad arguments, better apologies, and finally her illness. She wore it when I sat beside her hospital bed and rubbed my thumb across the smooth inside edge without ever noticing it was a different ring. I used to believe a wedding band represented the day two people promised to stay. Linda taught me something harder without ever saying it directly. Sometimes staying is not one promise. Sometimes it is a choice made again after the old promise has been damaged. The original ring now hangs on a chain in Leah's apartment, connected to two women who once helped her believe people could remain. The replacement is here with me. When I hold it, there is no repaired flat place beneath my thumb, just smooth gold. For years, I would have called that the flaw. Now it is the part one understands best.